Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us at this session, which is on mental health and parenting students. I'm going to give a short presentation about a framework we developed based on some research we did at the Jed Foundation, which I'll also talk a little bit about. And then we're going to go into a panelist session with Ezra Amira and Brian Mitra, who will also introduce themselves. So before I get started, I just wanted to give everyone a chance to put their little introduction of themselves into the chat. So just who you are and where you're coming from today, just so everyone can get acquainted. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so I'm Sarah Gorman. I'm the Director of Research and Knowledge Dissemination at the Jed Foundation. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about some research that we undertook to understand the mental health of undergraduate parenting students. We did a national study and developed a framework of recommendations for institutions of higher education to understand a little bit more how they can support this population. So before I do that, I just want to give you a sense of the Jed Foundation. We are a national nonprofit based in New York City, and we focus on the mental health as well as suicide prevention for teens and young adults ages 13 to 30. So we equip teens and young adults to navigate mental health challenges and also to be emotionally prepared to enter adulthood. And fulfill their potential. So we try to work with them to really develop life skills as well as social and emotional skills that they will carry with them into adulthood. We partner with high schools and colleges on sort of the systematic and institutional level to help them build policies and plans to support the mental health and emotional well-being of their students. And we also work with communities and community members to encourage them to understand what a mental health issue looks like in a young adult and how they can support the young adults in their communities. So this is just our approach to mental health in the higher education and high school space. We take as it says here, a comprehensive approach where we really look at upstream preventive factors as well as downstream crisis and other sorts of interventions for students. And we take a public health approach that's really focused on the whole student, everything from life skills and social connectedness to following crisis management procedures. And I think it's important to mention some of those upstream factors, particularly social connectedness. You'll see this come up a lot in the presentation today. Because we found that parenting students often feel disconnected or unwelcome on college campuses. And we do know this is an important predictor of mental health. So we focus a lot on some of these sort of upstream factors as they tend to also affect mental and emotional well-being. So for this project on the mental health of parenting students, we collaborated with the Ascend at the Aspen Institute. And our purpose was to really create a series of best practices for higher education to better support the mental health needs of parenting students. And also, since we know that mental health contributes to retention and educational outcomes, that was also a focus of this research. So we had a lot of research questions, and they sort of dictated the approach and the different components of the research project. So we wanted to understand what the current state of knowledge regarding mental health of this student group was. It turns out that there's not a ton of research on that. We did find some interesting findings, but in reality, there isn't a lot dedicated to this topic. What types of mental health supports do these students do they believe would be most helpful to them? And what are programs that currently exist on college campuses, if at all, that really address the mental health of this group? Are these programs effective? That's actually a very hard question to answer because it's hard to evaluate these programs, and there often isn't funding or time to evaluate them. So not so much is known about how effective different programs actually are. We wanted to understand, of course, the knowledge gaps that exist in this area so that we could do additional research. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, to make our work actionable was to really come up with recommendations about how educational leaders can better support the mental health of this student group. So as I said, the research questions dictated, what the components of the project would be. So first, we did a comprehensive literature review on the mental health of parenting students. And this was really to go to that question of what is the current state of knowledge. Qualitative research with parenting students, which will present some findings today. That was original qualitative research we did with a group of 25 students. And then we did quantitative research with parenting students as well. So we had over 1,000 students, both parenting and non-parenting students in that sample. And it was a nationally representative sample, and I'll give you some of the key findings from that as well. And we also did some analysis of existing data sets. So these were things like the Healthy Minds Study, the National College Health Association's yearly survey of college students, and the Hope Center's Real College Survey. So these are just national surveys that look at mental health, and in the case of the Hope Center, also looks a lot at basic needs and security and other factors that affect the well-being of college students. So to start with, I'll just tell you a little bit about the findings we had from the existing databases. So from Healthy Minds and the National College Health Association, there were very similar findings across these two surveys. And all of this was from 2020 as well. So parenting students, as I mentioned before, often feel that they don't belong on campus. But interestingly, a lot of them still had faith that the institution is looking out for their best interest. So they're really looking to the institutions, the colleges and universities to support them, but they're sort of feeling like they don't belong and they're not being really addressed. There are key differences in the resiliency and well-being of parenting students by age. So we found overwhelmingly that older student parents who were ages 25 and up were more resilient. They were less likely to drink excessively and use other substances, and they reported fewer mental health symptoms as compared to younger parenting students between the ages of 18 and 24. And parenting students also reported that they were having more academic trouble than non-parenting students on the whole, but they also were seeking out a lot more academic support, going to office hours, speaking to their professors a lot more frequently. From the Real College Survey, these were also findings from 2020. And so there were a number of questions as well about COVID-19 and the effects of that on mental health and basic well-being. We found a clear relationship between basic needs and mental health. So 32% of parents experienced depressive or anxiety symptoms associated with basic needs and security. So the more, the higher those needs and securities were, the more mental health issues went up. We also found, again, that levels of basic needs and security were higher among parenting students than non-parenting students, significantly so. In this example, 43% of parenting students reported not being able to pay utilities in the past 12 months versus 18% of non-parenting students. They were much more likely to work full time, which is probably not surprising to non-parenting students, but this of course contributed additional stressors and time management challenges. Parenting students reported not having enough time, especially for things like sleep and taking care of their own well-being. And again, with this age difference I discussed briefly on the last slide, basic needs and security was also higher among younger parents, 18 to 24, than among parents 25 and older. And they were also more likely to have lost their jobs during COVID-19. So more sort of instability during the pandemic and more general sort of background levels of basic needs and security among those younger parents. So now I'm just going to spend a few minutes and talk about the original research that we did. So we did a qualitative and a quantitative phase. The qualitative phase came first, and that really helped us to sort of define what we wanted to find out in this broad survey that we completed recently. So the qualitative phase, it was an online bulletin board, which is an asynchronous discussion board that takes place over the course of 3 days. Of course, everything was virtual and done online, partially because of the pandemic. And we had 25 full-time students of 2 and 4-year colleges, ages 18 to 45. They all had children age 13 and under. And the bulletin boards were conducted in January of this year. And then from there, we analyzed the findings and we developed a survey instrument that we use for a quantitative phase. And we ultimately had 1,022 college students. We had 586 parenting students and 436 students. So we oversampled for parenting students. We made sure that we could really hear their voices. Again, ages 18 to 45. And this survey took place between March and April of this year. So just a couple of key findings from both phases of the research. So feelings of guilt were overwhelming among parenting students. And what they really communicated was that they felt that their coursework was detracting from their time with their family. So even though they knew that their coursework and their schooling was important and would ultimately help their families, they felt guilty about the time that they spent not with their families. So 39% of student parents said they felt a sense of guilt often or all the time. Student parents are also more likely than non-parents to report difficulty focusing, which can be a symptom of depression and anxiety, and feeling depressed and hopeless. So over the past 30 days, how often have you felt? And the student parents were saying that they couldn't focus and they were depressed or hopeless all or most of the time in significantly higher numbers than non-student parents. This was also a really interesting one, contemplating dropping out. Since we know that mental health issues do have a strong relationship with retention, and this group of students can often struggle with mental health issues, but also just experiencing more stressors than their non-parenting counterparts. We did find that 38% of parenting students consider dropping out in the past month versus only 25% of non-parents. So that is significant in the sample, significant difference. And so, they say that when the stress is more than I can handle, it leaves me feeling incompetent. This is a quote from the focus groups, the online bulletin boards. Then I beat myself up questioning whether going to school is even worth it, if I have what it takes, if I'm being a good enough parent, etc. I probably thought about dropping out at least once per semester. So just this kind of almost constant feeling of there's too much stress. I don't know if I can do it. The guilt that I mentioned earlier is also apparent in this quotation. And that leading to all of that leading to the sense that maybe I should just leave and not do this. When it came to seeking help for mental health and emotional well-being, 35% of parenting students have actually requested help for mental and emotional well-being from college staff. And that wasn't necessarily always from a counseling center, but you can see here very often from a faculty member, a student health employee, versus 19% of non-parents. So this is kind of this shows sort of two things. One is that, I think we're seeing that student parents have higher rates of mental health challenges. So that may be partially why they're seeking help in larger numbers. There's a little bit of good news here in the sense that, there may be more comfort in this case in seeking help. So they are, actively looking for this kind of help, which is good, which is definitely good news. In terms of interest in other things that might help them, student parents across the board, they were pretty much very interested in most of the things that we mentioned. So online forums for student parents to connect. There was a lot of talk, especially in the focus groups, about wanting to meet with other student parents. So there was great interest in that. Social events for student parents at your college, similar to sort of the online forum idea, just a chance to connect. College events being open to bringing children. This was a big one. This was discussed at length during the focus groups as well. The sense that that college events were not accommodating, that sometimes people tried to bring their children and they got weird looks or comments, and they felt very uncomfortable. On the flip side, if they couldn't bring their children, then many times they couldn't go, and that would contribute to a sense of not feeling like they belong on campus. And then materials and resources to support the mental and emotional health of student parents. So they wanted specific things that were more tailored to the population, to the unique stressors that they face. We asked them also about what sorts of things they would like to see, what sorts of resources in general they would like to see. And a lot of things that are ultimately reflected in our recommendations and framework came up here. So childcare services came up. Childcare services, especially on campus, was a big topic of discussion. Free on-campus counseling for mental health, a marriage and family specialist, so having at least one person in the counseling center who could address family issues, and events, as I mentioned before, to meet and socialize with other student parents. So those were some of the key desired supports and resources. One student parent said they should have programs to help us with childcare, especially during finals and midterms. I think this would have helped me focus more on my studies so that I don't need to wait until my husband gets home to start focusing on my school. So a lot of people talked about having to wait until their children went to sleep to focus, to be able to do any of their schoolwork, and then being up until the late hours of the night, getting up, going to work, and doing the whole thing over again. And it was very stressful. And so feeling that maybe they could have some childcare help would make a big difference in terms of their ability to then take care of themselves as well. So I just want to share our framework, and this set of recommendations is actually going to be released as part of a report next Wednesday. But I wanted to just provide a preview of the recommendations now. So I won't read everything word for word, but the first one really focuses on training. So training mental health providers as well as faculty and staff, because everyone on campus should be equipped to understand the unique stressors that student parents face, as well as being able to be, especially for professors and staff, to be more accommodating and more flexible for whatever student parents need. Creating space on campus that meet the specific needs of parenting students. This will help foster a sense of belonging among these students. So, are there activities, are there spaces, are there ways that children can be involved at school events, as I was mentioning before? What needs to be done to ensure that this can happen, and thus ensure that parenting students are able to participate in these events that can be very important to their sense of belonging. Facilitate affinity groups and mentoring programs for older and younger parenting students. So both allowing for parenting students to meet and socialize with each other, but also specifically advocating for mentoring programs, because we saw such a difference between older and younger parenting students and their mental health and well-being. We thought that actual mentoring could be very useful in this case. Create policies that allow for flexibility for parenting students in the classroom. So, in this case, we heard a lot from students. Maybe about 60% of parenting students in our survey said that they experienced negative attitudes and comments from faculty. And especially when they disclosed that they were a parenting student and that they needed an accommodation, many times they were met with, just not very understanding remarks. And so what we would advocate for would be that at the institutional level, there are policies that really ask professors to allow for more flexibility when there are things that parenting students need to attend to, like sick children or not having access to childcare. And that, paired with more training for faculty members, would hopefully help make that environment a little bit more understanding for students. Regularly collect data on students who are parents. We found that administrators in many schools were often unaware of even the prevalence of parenting students on campus. And then, there was just very little knowledge in general about their mental health, their utilization of on-campus services, how connected or how much they felt they belonged on campus. Those things were just are really not known. And so, regularly collecting data, not just on who these students are and where they are, but also on how they feel about the services that are being offered to them and how they can be improved, just to better support this population. We also, as I mentioned before, we saw high rates of basic needs insecurity among parenting students. So we talked a little bit about in the framework about specific ways that schools can support parenting students in getting access to what they need. Identifying strategies to ensure parents have access to childcare. So whether that is creating or improving on-campus childcare options, or better coordinating and helping students find off-campus childcare services. This was something that we thought schools could address a little bit more. And then finally, this may seem small, but came up as a big topic that was important to a lot of people, making parenting students feel more visible by representing them on campus materials, as well as creating customized orientation materials. So to the extent that hopefully colleges and universities create more specific programming for and resources for parenting students, that this should be reflected in orientation materials that are geared toward this population. So with that, I just want to see if there are any questions. I see one question. Did you break down the mental health data of student parents based on race or any other demographics? Yes, we did. Definitely. Well, I talked about age and gender. We had some findings on race. We found that a lot of the things I mentioned were basically worse for non-white student parents. So some of the mental health findings, the rates of feeling hopeless and depressed, as well as some of the findings on basic needs and insecurities were just exacerbated for non-white participants. There's a lot of the data is skewed toward females because the vast majority of parenting students are female. So it's a little hard to tell sort of what might be different according to gender, but we did break that down a little bit. So in terms of getting the report, it's not out yet. I think the best thing to do would be to go to the JED Foundation website, which I can put in here, and subscribe if you want to get the email next Wednesday when it does come out. I don't have a problem with people having access to the PowerPoint, so I can ask the conference organizers about that too. Just jedfoundation.org. Okay. I don't see any other questions at the moment. Okay, so in that case, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to ask Brian and Ezra to come aboard. See Brian. Great. Okay. It's wonderful to have you both here, and we're just going to do a short panel discussion, and then, if there are other questions, please use the Q&A feature. So I'm going to start by asking each of you to just introduce yourselves. We'd all love to hear a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and your interest in this topic. So Ezra, feel free to go first, and then we'll go over to Brian.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ezra. I am currently a fourth-year clinical psych doctoral student at William James College. I have a specialization in forensics and an emphasis in children and families of adversity, which is a mouthful. I also received my master's from the same school. And I began my journey into psychology when I was an adolescent, and I grew up in foster care. in DCF custody. And I realized there was a dire need for not only competent, but open-minded and really empathetic professionals, especially when it comes to working with vulnerable populations. And that includes minority groups, parents who are students, just people in the foster care system in general. And my initial exposure to parents who were students wasn't at the colloquial level. It was actually much sooner. So what we know is that adolescents in child protective services have a higher risk of becoming pregnant prior to graduating high school. And that was my experience growing up in the foster care. Was a lot of my peers had experienced pregnancy. And I really began to wonder what the correlation was between teenage pregnancy and foster kids. And I stumbled upon a simple and yet really complex answer, which was is adversity. And I myself became pregnant at the age of 17, and found myself a parenting student. Um, and my journey to understand really sort of the intersectionality between what it means to be a parenting student and mental health started well before my lived experience, and continues to this day, because 10 years later of being in academia, I'm a career student and now an expert in mental health. So here I am.
Thank you, Ezra. Introduce myself. I'm Brian Mitra. Currently, I'm the Dean of Student Affairs at Kingsborough Community College, part of the City University of New York. And I also serve as a subject matter expert with the JED Foundation. Part of my responsibility is overseeing a lot of direct support services for our students, ranging from our Child Development Center, our student wellness areas, counseling, health center, working with some of our special populations like our veterans, low income opportunity programs, things like that. But I think, this topic is really important to me because of the students we serve at the community college, right? That's not to say that this is an issue, at 4 years and other institutions, but particularly understanding that our community college students lead complex lives, right? School is often fourth on their priority list. Their parents, their caregivers, they're working full time, but they're still able to succeed, right? So I think this topic is really important, and really kind of thinking through when we talk about retention, when we talk about persistence, student wellness and parenting falls under that, right? Is such a key thing to think about when we talk about these different things of retention, persistence, graduation, and as you heard Sarah mention, it's compounded with other things, food insecurity, homelessness. So really thinking through as an administrator, how do you approach some of these challenges? What voices are missing in the conversation, and how do you plan, to support these students through their academic journey?
Great. Thank you so much to both of you. Really interesting backgrounds, and we're all excited to hear more. So for both of you, I just want to start by asking, I know obviously I spoke about what are the challenges that parenting students face and how is this different from the general student population, but I'd really love to hear from your perspectives, from where you sit, what you see it as the challenges, and is this different from the general student population, and how does it differ? So Brian, we can start with you.
Sure. I think it's an issue of self-identifying, right? We make a lot of assumptions about our students, but if our students don't self-identify as a parenting student, we don't know. And I think that's really challenging, because if, for instance, like us, we have a child development center on campus, but there's always a waiting list, right? So what does that mean for us in terms of the amount of parenting students on campus, the hours, the expectations, and things like that? So, I mean, I think that's something that I think about. And, in some of the other work that we do and listening to other campuses, as Sarah mentioned, some campuses don't have child development centers or relationships, where they can drop off their child while they go to class and things of that nature. So I think that's a big challenge, in terms of as an administrator, how do I identify these students if they're not self-identifying themselves? And I think, it really speaks to some of the recommendations, through these findings about, making it more inclusive in the beginning, the application process, the marketing materials, talking about and ensuring that we're speaking of the resources to the various populations, that we serve, and really making it more inclusive in the language and things of that nature.
So I agree with absolutely all of that. And those are many challenges that I faced myself when I still am a parent who's in school. So I think for me, one of the things that always stands out, especially being a mental health clinician and working with this population and being a part of this population, is that there's a host of challenges that are unique to student parents, and they begin once again sometimes before the pregnancy even occurs. So if you think about having a lack of a stable support system, it's often the absence of that support system that leads to the unplanned pregnancy. And so the absence of that same support system then becomes a major barrier for parents attempting to juggle the rigors of often single parenthood and academia at the same time. And we know sort of from the research that lack of stable and healthy support systems is associated with higher risk of depression, anxiety, social deficits, and my favorite topic is a forensic professional, criminality. And when you think about sort of the general population who don't have stable homes, college often becomes their new home, right? They adopt those peers and they adopt the school into their pseudo family. And for student parents, this is a challenge because the general population of college students feel they can't relate to them sometimes. School systems might carry biases towards parents. Both parties might shy away from interacting with one another because while the main priority of a college student is typically to earn good grades and pay tuition, the main priority of a parent who's a student will always be being a parent first. And that sets them apart from being a traditional student. There's also the idea that social events on campus are often not kid friendly. Professors make assumptions, as you mentioned, that every student is between the ages of 18 and 22. They have no other obligations besides sort of to party and pass the class, right? Get the degree. That's it. That's all you have to worry about. And I remember dealing with that, and I remember feeling like that doesn't apply to me, and it never will. And especially when you're young, you have even more stereotypes that are thrown at you, and all these things really place a wall between the parents and other members that are both peers and professionals on campus that further ostracizes the parenting student. And social isolation and feelings of not belonging, even though it plagues many traditional college students, but where does that leave the parents who have a fear of not belonging or not being welcome, where that's actually rooted in truth? That's not a cognitive distortion. And where do you go from there?
Thank you so much to both of you. And I sort of hear you both mentioning this issue of disclosure, which, came up in the research as well, is that, a lot of the time, nobody even knows, people don't even tell their professors or anyone that they have a child or children. So that's part of the problem. They don't feel comfortable. And I also, what Ezra said really resonated about the factors that may lead to the pregnancy in the first place are some of the things that exacerbate the mental health and other outcomes later on. That's come up a few times in addition to lack of stable support. Something that's been mentioned to me is also higher rates of poverty. And so, the research from the Hope Center on Basic Needs and Security was really illuminating and in showing that some of these there are these pre-existing problems that are also associated with mental health issues and emotional well-being problems. So, just extremely complex, layered set of factors. I want to turn to Brian again, just to talk a little bit about, you mentioned in passing a few things that exist at your school that are there to support parenting students. And I'd be curious if you could talk a little bit more about any of those efforts and as well as things maybe you wish that your school was doing.
Sure. I think as I mentioned, we do have a child development center. I think, one of the things that we're constantly doing is just assessing the usage, assessing the service of itself, how we can build collaborations, with other areas, recognizing that, our parenting students lead complex lives and have a lot of different responsibilities and may not have the time, to participate in events or to go to academic advisement, to go to career development. So I think of a couple of things. One is really the hours of operation, right? Is really how does that align with the courses that are happening on campus? That's great. You may have a child development center on campus, but if it's 9 to 5 and classes go till 10 in the evening or start at 7 a.m., what does that mean for that population in terms of specific curriculum and programs that are geared at certain times? So I think it's important for us to always kind of take a look at that. I'm happy to say that our child development center runs from 8 in the morning till 10 p.m. To really support the various populations. But there's also a capacity issue, like I mentioned. And I think when that happens, what do you do, right? Because there's a designated space. How do you expand that? And kind of think about how do you get more resources for this? Our director at the Child Development Center is a very proactive director. She secures a lot of different grants, federal funded grants, which support the Child Development Center, but then also what's the institutional commitment to this as well, right? And I think about that often because, as I mentioned, at other institutions, they don't even have a Child Development Center. So, where do you start off? Right? Where is there an opportunity to start thinking about this and develop a long-term plan for that? I think one of the other best practices or things that we've tried is really bringing other services to the Child Development Center, right? So are there opportunities during pickup where we can pass along information about career development or advisement or some of the events that are taking place, and really kind of gear it to that cadre of students and ensure that they have the information. We've even tried to bring academic advisors, during those pickups and drop-offs, so students can just ask quick questions because we know how valuable their time is. So I think that's an important. How do you bring wraparound services to the Child Development Center? I think that's really about collaboration too, and kind of being a little bit more creative in the thinking. And then really, I go back to how do we provide resources not only for the parenting students, but also our faculty and staff, so they know of the resources on campus, right? And I think it's more than just, okay, direct them to the Child Development Center, but hey, maybe there's a comprehensive list we can develop. And I think that's hard because who's taking that inventory? Who's putting that together, right? There really has to be kind of an institutional commitment to that, and it may be just low-hanging fruit of just doing an inventory and posting it online. But if we want to continue to have this conversation, in terms of supporting parenting students, I think these are some of the things that we need to think about. I really agree with this inclusive language, and really creating a culture of care for institutions, right? And I think that's part of, marketing and advertising, that we do have parenting students on campus, orientations for parenting students, resources, etc.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I love what you said about the kind of wraparound services at the child care center, because that what came up through so much in the research and just in individual conversations was this time poverty. It's just like I just don't have time, and I can't even imagine, just the time crunch, and people are sacrificing sleep and et cetera. So having some of those resources brought to them, I think, is a really good idea.
So I'll also add too, as you think about, your programs, there may be opportunities too, right, for academic programs to be involved, internships of early childhood, education students interning at the Child Development Center just to get that experience. So I think, there are ways to be creative about it, but I think, it really is just being a little bit strategic and mapping that out in terms of, what that looks like.
Great. So I have a similar question for Ezra, a little bit from your vantage point as a former parenting student. So if you could talk a little bit about what are some things that you wish your educational institution had done to make balancing school and life easier? And also, do you have any advice for current parenting students?
Well, I'm still a parenting student, 10 years strong. So I'll I'll speak to what I would have wished and continue to wish educational institutions would do to lessen our burden and really give us the chance at building blocks to success. So I think one of the things that Brian had initially mentioned about the times that classes start, providing classes at more than one time block, and really considering that early morning 7 a.m. or the 2 to 3 p.m. block as one that literally used to strike fear into my heart and probably every other parent's heart, because that's pick up and drop off time. And I can't do that. When you only offer the class, at that particular time, it puts us in a disadvantage and a position where we have to pick between our two priorities, which is parenting and graduating. And so really offering classes that are later in the morning, or at different times and that doesn't just accommodate to parents, it also accommodates to a wide range of college students who have jobs or other obligations. And so that really is something that definitely would have helped out. The other thing is have child-friendly events on campus. Please, because it's very difficult as a college student. Again, there's this American idea of, people go to college and it's a party 24/7 and you're learning who you are and you have all the free time to explore and, come up with an identity and all these things. And that American dream simply doesn't exist for disadvantaged populations. It doesn't exist for low income groups. It doesn't always exist for minority groups. It doesn't exist for parents who are in school because they do have other obligations and they might have children. They might have siblings they're taking care of. And we really need to open up events on campus to be more inclusive of the different populations that exist. And not only that, but invite the general community. It really takes a village. That applies here. I may not always be able to rely on a peer if need be, for help with some of my parenting duties if there's a class or something else, but there are other parents in the community that exist that I may not have access to, because colleges often take up a majority of the city, right? There's college towns and they're segregated from the rest of the community. And that isolates us, because I might be one of 5 parents on my side of the campus, but I'm not one of 5 parents in the entire town. And why aren't we sort of bridging that gap between the community and the school to allow for parents to have a bigger support system, right? Going back to that initial issue of there's a lack of a support system for these parents, and how can we reach for that, and how can we get different people to have access to support systems from just outside the school as well. And really another very simple and life-saving thing that professors can do, record your lectures. I understand that depending on the class content and the age of the child, it may not always be appropriate to bring a child into the classroom. There are plenty of times that I still to this day need to bring my child into the classroom. For those of you who don't know what forensic work at the mental health level means, I specialize in psychopathy, which is psychopaths and sex offender treatment. Very not appropriate for a child to attend those classes, right? That's the clinical treatment that I do. And so I understand it may not always be feasible to bring a child into that classroom. Recording the lecture allows those students to either asynchronously watch on their own and maybe do a discussion question for participation points, or even Zoom into the classroom, right? We're almost a year and a half into the pandemic. I would hope that going forward, we're able to continue utilizing Zoom, because it's not only good for viruses, right? It's beneficial for a whole host of other things that can be utilized within the classroom now. And it would allow students to receive credit, which can be a big stressor for if you have a sick child, if childcare falls through, all these sort of issues that arise. And it allows for minimal classroom disruption. So again, like, it really takes a village to raise a child, and the school needs to be part of that village. As far as advice, so one of the things I never did as a parenting student when I first started out, that I've now missed the boat on, because as a doctoral student, sometimes I'm happy if I just remember to shower. And this is all doctoral students, right? Not just the parents out of us. We're all just walking around wondering what day of the week it is. So I remember getting my associates originally, and I had obtained that while I was living in a state-run group home for mothers who were in child protective services. And I was so thrilled to be one of the only mothers to have ever graduated with a college degree, leaving this group home, and the only mom to ever pursue a bachelor's after that. And I graduated with a 4.0. And I told myself, when I transferred, to my bachelor's degree, I wanted to make friends. I wanted to be social. I didn't want to be the mom that was cooped up in the house all day, dreaming of getting straight A's anymore. A B here and there was fine. The straight A's weren't worth starving my joy in life. My mental health deserves a break from what I'd done to kind of prove to myself that 17-year-old warden of the state, and I could succeed and I could come on top, and defying expectation and all of these very romanticized ideas. And then I got to undergrad, and I did the same thing I told myself I wouldn't do. I took 8 classes a semester. I filled all my free time with jobs or internships or more classes. And I contributed to my own isolation. As a parenting student, I perpetuated the very same stereotype that I know is false, which is that every single parent in academia is weird and somehow unapproachable, or they're not, you can't sit with us. Like, you're not part of the crowd, you're isolated. And I perpetuated that by sort of having this idea that I was different and I was just there to get my degree and move on and never look back. Don't be me, right? C's get degrees. Maybe not for graduate students. I did just, maybe not if you're going to go further, but if it's between a C and your sanity, I'm telling you, spell sanity with a C and live your best life, because despite sort of being able to say, I'm going to be a doctor in a year and all of these exciting things, I don't have any fond memories of my college experience. I forgot to brand myself as someone who was more than just a student parent. That wasn't my whole identity. And one of the things that I still see today and I worry about constantly is this idea of having your entire identity fall on your role as a parent who's in school. That's not all who you are. It's not who you were before you had your child. It's not who you are with your child. It will not be who you are after your child flies the coop someday, or my son is 9 and will probably be 40 in my basement. But if we ever get there, it will not just be my role. And so, if I could go back and change anything, make those connections. Seriously, harass your schools to have events that allow children. Take your children anyways. Take your children with you. Go out. They deserve it. You deserve fun, and they deserve fun too. And there will always be an opportunity for you to get a degree. Your mental health, that's your priority. You need to work on that too.
Thank you so much. That's great advice for anyone, even especially during COVID and all the stress. And I'm sorry if you can hear my child screaming in the background, but that's the reality. I do really like what you said, just about almost very simple thing. Just record the Zoom lecture, or record the lecture or let people Zoom in. One of the things we put in the recommendations is let people hand in assignments virtually. Don't make them come into campus and hand in a hard copy every time. Some people actually talked about that being a barrier. So I think this idea of greater flexibility is really important and really helpful for parenting students. And your specific comments really brought that out. So that's really helpful.
Sarah, something that Esra really said, which really resonated with me was, what have we learned from this time away from campus, right? Zoom, right? How do we creating more options? What are our lessons learned that we're going to bring back to when we get onto campus again? And I think what's evident is that, these types of opportunities and workshops, via online or Zoom, can create opportunities for us to meet with students and populations that may not necessarily have come to us through the front door, right? So because of time constraints or things like that, or comfortableness, etc. So I think that's one thing as administrators and things like that we really need to consider. What have we learned here? Are there populations perhaps that, are taking more advantage of this just because it's more convenient, it's easier, and it helps them succeed in their journey?
Absolutely. I think anytime we can try to have a silver lining from the pandemic in the mental health field, we're talking a lot about telehealth and how, hopefully that's increased access for some people to mental health care. And so, everyone's thinking about that, and that might be something that, is advantageous from this very strange experience. So I have one last structured question, and then also in terms of just like letting you wrap up and asking you if you have anything else to add. But first, I would just love to hear from both of you, and whoever wants to go first can go first. What are some ways you think faculty and staff could be trained to better understand and recognize these unique stressors we've been talking about? And what are some actions faculty and staff can take to help parenting students feel more welcome?
All right, so I'll go first, I guess. But I have this notion, especially thinking of just about my population of 2-year institutions, meeting students where they're at, right? I think we have a lot of assumptions of what college students are or who they are, but we just don't know, right? And I think that changes every semester, every year, every situation, like the pandemic, and things like that. So how do we work with our faculty and staff to meet students really where they are right now, right? And that could be, in this situation right now, childcare is an issue. So what flexibility do we have around that? And I think there needs to be a conversation around that, with faculty and staff, and maybe perhaps that's led by some of the vice presidents, the presidents, and really kind of talking about, as I mentioned before, this culture of care, because I think, once again, you can really think about retention and persistence by just changing a culture, right? And shifting that culture. And we all know that shifting an institutional culture may take a long time, but there are low-hanging fruit that we can kind of address, right? So perhaps it is even just handing in assignments electronically versus a hard copy. So I think that, and I think it's the constant training, right? How do we continue to get professional development for our staff, on the trending issues and the things that we're seeing, and then also working with our faculty, whether that's through teaching and learning centers, whether that's through faculty interest groups, to really create champions for for an equitable campus, right? And really kind of thinking through how we implement programs, right, equitably, right? And I think that's one of the things that we need to be constantly challenging ourselves to kind of move to. There may be a population we don't know about yet that feels disadvantaged just because of access to some of the resources, to campus, things like that. So I think how do we change that, and how do we really meet students where they are?
And I'm briefly going to add to that, because I think meeting students where they are is, again, regardless of your status as a parent, meeting people where we are is, the golden ticket in therapy, right? You don't ever meet somebody, you don't ever push somebody to start where they're not ready to start. And really, I think it starts at the foundation. For one, there's a lack of trauma-informed care that exists in educational settings as a whole when it comes to various issues, but parenting students being one of them. And before you learn how to speak or how to teach to a vulnerable population, you must first come to understand what made them vulnerable to begin with. And I lived in teen parenting homes as an adolescent. I lived on a campus with other young moms as part of a teen, like a parenting group that you could apply into in a college. And today I continue to watch as parents are sort of continuously struggling to stay afloat in the classroom, and internships and all these things that are literally designed for students with little priorities outside of maintaining the degree. There's an element of privilege that we fail to discuss when it comes to academia. There's an element of who is it that has what it takes to get certain degrees, and it often does not fall on skill. It does not fall on intelligence. It does not fall on anything besides how privileged have you been thus far in life to be able to afford, carve out the time, all of these things that have nothing to do with your capacity to succeed. And that's really problematic. And so the first step really is psychoeducation. The first step is to help the institution itself understand not only the unique challenges that I may experience coming in as a parenting student, but the unique challenges I experienced prior to even becoming pregnant, right? Going back to that initial comment that I made, what happened in my life to lead me to get to here? We know that a majority of young parents have felt their own childhoods were inadequate and lacking in affection. We know that lack of supervision and neglect often go hand in hand and are leading factors in teenage pregnancy. We know that things like suicidality actually decreases for many adolescents after having a child because it was their active suicidality prior that contributed to the decisions or interactions that occur that led them to this position. And how do we conceptualize that to better understand the needs of young parents? And so, above all, a trauma-informed approach to academia is just missing from the foundational work. And before anything else is implemented, that needs to be implemented.
Thanks so much for saying all of that. I wholeheartedly agree with both of you. And we do talk a little bit about trauma in the framework as well, but it's just, you're right, it doesn't just apply to parenting students. There's such a lack of focus on that across educational settings, and it really needs to be better addressed. So thank you for saying that. I think that's really important. Before I ask you one more question, I do see there's a question in the Q&A. I've also seen in many lower income families where single parents also do not have the support from their families and communities. How does this issue get addressed in an academic environment? How does this impact the self-esteem and mental health of the parent student? So I don't know if either of you have thoughts on, I mean, you Ezra sort of touched on this a bit, but if you have anything further to say about how these things might get addressed in an academic environment or not, or how they should get addressed.
I think, I go back to what resources are available on campus, as well as Ezra said, what's in the community? What are the relationships there, right? So perhaps we don't have the necessary resources on campus, but what's that referral like to an outside community-based organization or something to that nature where we can refer our students to? I think we need to constantly think about that and develop those partnerships and relationships, especially as in the academic environment where, budget cuts and it's such and resources are so limited sometimes, you have to constantly think through where you're going to be able to get these resources and ensure student success, right? I mean, it comes back to that. So I think, for instance, at our institution, we have something called the Access Resource Center. And it really is, it used to be it used to be called Single Stop USA, and we were one of the first institutions to have Single Stop on campus. And it really helped students look through what benefits they qualified for. So that's one way of providing more holistic support for students, doing an intake and seeing what public benefits they may be available to them or what things they can take advantage of. Over this pandemic, we've also noticed that we've been distributing a lot more emergency funds, right? And it goes to that, these students are on their own. And, is it, do I eat or go to school and pay tuition, right? And I mean, these are the life choices that our students are making. So we really need to pay attention to that, right? And how we need to approach that. And that's from all different angles, right? So, I go back to, the student wellness approach, that everybody's responsibility. It's not just mental health counselors. It's not just student affairs. It's, it should be from the president all the way through, the directors, through our public safety, our buildings and grounds crew, because everybody is impacting a student, one way or the other. And I think the more informed we are about resources and relationships, the better support we can provide to our students.
And I think this kind of goes back to, I know I keep saying it takes a village, but literally it takes a village. I have a tattoo on my back that says it takes a village. Like, that's how much I believe in it. This idea of, unfortunately, the Western world has this idea of the microsystem. The microsystem is your niche. Those are the people that are supposed to help you. And without the microsystem, your entire being collapses. That's silly, right? In other parts of the world, your microsystem doesn't exist. Your microsystem are your teachers. Your microsystem are coaches, our mentors, the farm, the butcher, your microsystem is everybody in that community. It is everybody chipping in to make sure that everybody is okay. And I know that sounds a little bit like communism, but I swear there's so many benefits to this model of survival. And that's initially why I had said, the school is a great place, but we need to tie in the school with the community, because those two places are not different. And for a traditional college student who may not need access to the community, that's fine and dandy, but it's not the same for everyone, right? And it's not just the same for parents who are students either. And so really bridging that gap and being able to reach out. I mean, one of the things that I was able to do, and I'm very thankful for it, was even if most of the students aren't parents, who are parents? My professors. All of my professors are parents. What is stopping you from interacting with me beyond sort of a professional level? And can we form those bonds? And can you be part of my support system if I need it? Now, this doesn't mean give me an A if I fail your test, but does it mean that I can come to you to talk to you? Does it mean that I can, have you on my team when it comes to advocacy, when it comes to just somebody that I need? And really finding ways to sort of get in there with other people that are in a similar boat or are willing to even sit on the boat with you if it's not one that they've experienced before, is really important. And so from a mental health perspective, and I work predominantly with, incarcerated populations that grew up in the foster care system and certainly do not have families who support them or are in communication with them. And a big part of treatment is, in order to avoid recidivism, once you get out, who do you have? Who is on your team? And support system is the number one sort of mitigator for keeping people alive and happy. And that needs to be addressed.
Love what you said about professors also being parents, like, staff, faculty, and, having the experience of having children is chaotic for anyone. So they should be able to have some degree of understanding. That's a great point. And obviously love what Brian said about everyone being responsible for the well-being of students, not just the counselors. That's been sort of our catchphrase, as you know, at the JED Foundation since we were founded over 20 years ago, that it does take a village. It's the whole campus community has to create an environment so that, as we like to say, there's no wrong door. There's nowhere a student can turn where they just encounter someone who has no idea what to do or doesn't want to help. So really important. So with that, we have a few more minutes. I just want to see if either of you or both of you would like to add anything else in wrapping up. Closing words of wisdom.
I think it's just an important conversation that we need to continue. As Sarah mentioned in the beginning of this, there wasn't a lot of research around this, right? And I think as our students change and situations changes, as COVID, what does COVID impact look like now? On our parenting students, it's going to be interesting. But I think the conversation and the work needs to continue. So I challenge myself and my colleagues that sit in roles of administration and faculty to really think through, how we can best support all our students, right? And meeting them where they're at.
All I have to say is that I'm an utter mess and I made it this far. So everyone out there's got this, I promise you.
I just wanted to point out that I think no one showers anymore during the pandemic. So you're not alone.
Good.
This is a constant topic of conversation. People are like, oh, is it okay? I only showered twice this week. So don't feel
I show up to client sessions in pajama bottoms. You've no idea what I'm wearing below.
Exactly. Okay. Well, on that note, I'd love to just thank Brian and Ezra so much. Really wonderful insight, and so glad that you could join us. as I said, our framework and recommendations is going to be released next Wednesday. So it will be on our website somewhere, not exactly sure where yet, once after that point, and also on Ascend's website. And as always, we encourage you to sign up for our emails. If you do that, you will get a link to it when it's available. So anyway, thank you so much to everyone for joining us this afternoon. I think I'm supposed to mention that your closing session is at 2:20, so you have a little break. And with that, thanks again, and thank you for coming, and yeah, have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.